You're listening to Dotwave, and I'm your host, John O'Wells. I'm excited about this week's show. Our friend Colin Williams, otherwise known as Modekt, is joining us here in the studios. These are strange times. They're strange times for the whole planet, and we are sequestered in our houses doing this social distancing. It feels strange. We're all meeting up on Zoom meetings. But there's a really important part of today's discussion with Colin, where he really challenges us to look for opportunities to listen and to help others, and to listen to their needs. And in his case, his needs were having people tell him that what he was doing was worthwhile, and that he should release an album, and that he should follow his dreams and make the music that he wants to. So I love this discussion, and I think it's really timely for what's going on right now. So without further ado, here is Colin Williams. Here I sit with Mr. Colin Williams, or as we like to call him, Modekt. Dude, thanks for doing this, man.
I'm honestly, I'm pleased to be here, man.
So you are here. You're in San Diego. This is awesome. Okay, for the listener, we're talking on Instagram. And so he says, yo, I'd like to come to San Diego and play Modular on the Spot, which me and my partner, Matt Stewart, run. I say, sure, sounds great. You're going to fly to San Diego for Modular on the Spot. So Mr. Frequent Flyer Miles sports the miles and comes down and plays. And dude, you played yesterday at Modular on the Spot and you killed it. It's such a pleasure to have you here, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's
That's
been
awesome.
I love California, and San Diego is fantastic. I mean, again, it's not just coming here to play Mott's. I had to get my octopus tacos. I had to get my fish tacos.
He tells me of this place that the local guy has never heard of. And we go out and have the best tacos here.
It's fantastic. Go to Oscar's.
So we're going to listen to music from a new record which you're putting out. We're going to play a little bit of your Mott's performance yesterday. We should do that.
Let's do it.
Okay. And we're going to talk about this new project and all kinds of fun stuff. So before we get started, let's listen to one of your new tracks.
Absolutely.
You sent me 3. You want to start with the first one? It's called From Here.
Yeah, might as well.
Great. Tell us about From Here.
So the backing of that track, kind of where that whole idea kind of started from, was simply a little bit of a recording that I had done of I believe it was the Hertz Donut, running into the Erica synths. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. The Fusion Delay Vintage Ensemble module. Had recently got it, and it was just kind of, instead of reading the manual like you're supposed to,
Who reads manuals?
Just started pumping audio into it and tweaking knobs.
I don't want to read the manual.
Right, and hit record, and it was one of those things that I was like, oh, this is really, really cool. And then fortunately I recorded it because I never could get it to do anything again.
Okay, this is the pro tip. You always have to hit record when you're playing modular.
Absolutely,
you
do
have to.
Yeah, so
Right.
So it was one of those things where I was like, this is pretty cool sounding. That became the backing of of the track, where that's kind of playing as an underlying element that's just kind of going around in there, and the rest just sort of formed around it and just kind of kept adding.
I love it. Okay, here's From Here from Modekt. All right, so you and I have talked about the fact that you've grown this love for techno,
Mm-hmm.
but now this is this rich, droney, ambient, well, maybe textured goodness.
Yeah.
What's going on? Tell us about some of your processing.
Boy, so while I love, everything kind of beat driven and anything that's kind of pulsing like that, I love very much, a darker droning, lower, just kind of not necessarily angry, but intense maybe. Is that maybe sort of a word for it? I don't know. Yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like there's a lot of emotion that you can kind of get out, and I think that probably has to do with a lot of these tracks here. That it's a situation where maybe I was just pissed off one day or whatever and thought, hey, you know what, man, this really low filter, just angry sounding sound coming through just is what I'm really liking. I really, really like the element of having, percussion and drums along with kind of the droning stuff as well. But one of the things that I have kind of realized is that, they're like music like that. It's very much kind of, I view it similar to how I kind of do with, with like black and white photos, where it's kind of open to the interpretation of, in this case, the listener, and to kind of take them on a little bit of a journey, an unintentional journey, because that wasn't exactly, the initial goal that was being being put out there for that song or any of the others. It was just a situation where, it's like, hey, here's what I'm feeling at the moment. Here it is.
And do you feel like when you make music, it comes from something which you're bringing to the moment? Like, I'm feeling this, I'm going to do this.
Absolutely.
Or do you feel like it? Oh yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Not with the stuff with any form of, drums or percussion or anything like that, but anything that is basically a backing, atmospheric sound. It's absolutely due to, some form of, waking up on the wrong side of the bed.
Or some sort of reaction to emotions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. I've never worked like that personally, but I know that it's common.
Yeah. It ends up being a thing that kind of just happens. That I if everything seems to be right as rain, then I tend to things sometimes come out a little more happy,
sure,
and cheery, which is funny because I have at times purposely tried to avoid that sort of thing because I just didn't want to make that. But yeah, I definitely find that does play a factor in what comes out.
I had an experience like this live where, and this was recently, where when I got to the show, everything was wrong and funny, and I got my panties in a wad about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
The sound, the location, the this, the that. And when I finally got to playing, what happened was that I was aware that I was performing angrily.
Oh, really?
And I actually, for the first time, I've never done this, I really channeled it and found myself really enjoying it. Like, have you ever had that experience live?
I have. I mean, of the couple times that I have played, the few times that I've played, there have been instances, specifically though, when it comes to, when it comes to the atmospheric stuff. Yeah, I mean, there are times where I think nerves also play into it, right? And so I think that you can come across as, and I mean, I've heard other people play before, and I'm like, they sound like they're nervous right now.
Oh my goodness.
Right. And I know that I've felt that way even, about myself, or man, I'm just kind of pissed about something or whatever it may be. And I think it probably does come out, and the other times maybe you're just not in too great of a mood or whatever. And you know what? Just a booming, pulsing kick drum is just, it's like,
Regarding the pulsing bass notes, yesterday you played modular on the spot here in San Diego, as we said. And you played this awesome set with this pulsing kick drum. And it strikes me that I rarely have this ability to have this restraint to just have a pulsing kick drum going
Yeah.
through it. I've got to always dress it up, give it the sexy polyrhythms, tweak it constantly, make it what I think is, quote, maybe more interesting.
Right.
But I'm hearing what you're doing. I'm relaxing into it. This thing's pulsing. You're painting all on top of it. I loved it.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I loved it.
I appreciate it.
How do you use this restraint and not want to dress it up and keep moving deeper with it?
So that's something that I, going into the performance yesterday, it was kind of something that I honestly went into with the mindset of don't push through this, don't rush through this, just make this simple. And sometimes I feel like you can overcomplicate things that don't necessarily need to be overcomplicated.
For sure.
And I've done that in performances before where it was like, hey, you know what? It's not just going to be straightforward to the floor. It's going to be, varying kick drum patterns.
Right.
And what I've found is that anytime I've done that, I tend to just mess things up. And I start rushing through things. Stuff doesn't start, jiving, and kind of, things start to sound a little bit weird. And so I went into it honestly yesterday with the mindset of hey, here's how this is going to work. I'm not going to try to fancy this up. Here's what this is going to be. There were only, there were 4, rhythmic elements, including the kick drum. And I was like, this is just going to be standard, normal, generic patterns, to be honest. But it's not
what it sounded like.
Well, I appreciate that. But definitely going into it with a mindset of don't rush through things.
It's good for you.
Because, I tend to have, a mindset of, oh man, I wonder if people are getting tired of hearing this kick drum, or I wonder if, is this getting, too boring, or whatever it may be. Or, hey, I just, flew through a section that I was doing, and, and I'm now 4 minutes in, and it's every, 4.5 seconds, it's hi-hats in and out. It's, kicks changing pattern, and where you can't really latch onto it. And I think that's one of the main things that I love about techno is that you can kind of get lost in it. It's a type of music that you can have on, and it's just kind of going, and I love it. And one of the things that I've always thought was kind of neat about a kick drum that's just going forward to the floor is that no matter the speed, right? If it's going faster or slower, I mean, in reality, it's almost like a pulse. It's like your heartbeat, right? And and that's something I think is kind of cool about it.
So this is a small section from yesterday's performance at Modular on the Spot here in San Diego from Modekt. All right, so take us backward in time. You and I have talked about, this is a great conversation about, am I a musician? Have I come from music? Who am I now? When did I start? Tell me about some of this journey for you and calling yourself a musician now and where you've come from.
The only formal training, if we want to call it that, musically related that I've had was middle school. Parents required my brother and I to take music for a couple years.
What did you take?
So my options that I had at the time, it was you either did clarinet, trombone, trumpet, snare drum, or you could go with sax. So obviously saxophone.
Of course.
Yeah, so I went sax because that's the coolest instrument of specifically all of those, right?
Right, but I mean, definitely.
And
I don't know, clarinet ladies, come on, I'm the clarinet player.
No. There was also a flute.
Nope.
No. Didn't want to do that either. So that was a couple year period of my life where, to be honest, it was okay. Let's get in here, get out, be done with it. I didn't want to. I didn't really want to do it at the time. They felt it was beneficial for us, And what I realized was that I could very much kind of skate by just simply learning what each, finger position, everything on the sax, what sounds it would make, which notes would come out. Never really was any good or ever tried to learn sheet music. But what I realized was I was pretty good at winging it, and I could just simply, okay, here's what I've got to play, and then just do it, right? After that ended, it was, hey, okay, you got to do it for 2 years. 2 years are up. Bye. I didn't want to do it anymore, and so quit doing that. All of the other friends and everything, were in the bands in high school and did all that. I was not. Always thinking, hey, this would be pretty cool to, be in a band where you're, playing music in front of people and everything. But that just wasn't the case.
Because you still had all the residual ladies from the saxophone years. They were still hanging around.
Man, it was a really small school. I don't know if there were any ladies that were there.
Damn it.
So fast forward then to when age 35, when jumping into this, it was in all honesty, it was just it was one of those. I probably had an early midlife crisis, maybe, so to speak. I don't know. My wife and kids and I, we had been living abroad for a year for her work in Slovakia.
Oh, we've got to hear about this.
Yeah, so we moved over there, lived in Bratislava, Slovakia. It's right on the border of Slovakia's capital. It's about 60 miles away, 45, 60 miles, somewhere around there, whatever, away from Vienna, Austria. 2.5 hours away from Budapest, Hungary, which is by far my favorite city in the entire world. It's fantastic.
What a great experience for your kids, too.
It was great. It was absolutely great. But everything that was there, you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't go into a store, a mall, grocery store, whatever it was, without hearing some form of electronic music. It was just huge there.
I see.
And I think while I did have previous experience with having listened to electronic music, it was really limited to to my knowledge of the Mortal Kombat soundtrack that had like Orbital on there, which was my first one that I really liked. Okay. Which is really sad if you think about it. But
hey, we're not judging.
I mean, it is what it is, right? So once we moved back from overseas, my wife and I, we love going to festivals, love going to concerts and everything like that. And we found ourselves at a Dead show, of which we were, standing there and watching this show, and he's up on stage, doing his DJ thing, 7 Deep Corona wise, and
right,
and I'm like,
wait, Coronas?
That's what he was drinking. He likes Coronas, apparently. Yeah, I don't know. So he was up there, doing his thing, and I was like, man, it's like at the moment, because we moved back, and it was a thing where previously I'd been, working in other avenues. And so once we got back, it was okay. Well, what am I going to do now?
Right.
I'm 35 years old. I got to pick a career path. So we're watching him up there, and I thought, hey man, you know what? This looks fun. I said I'm gonna become a music producer, because that's the approach you have when you're 35-year-old.
I'm gonna be a producer
who has absolutely no idea what they're
going. I'm not sure what producer means. Man, I'm gonna produce.
I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna do what that guy's doing, because he clearly doesn't look like he's working and he's having fun up there.
Right.
Not realizing the magnitude of how stupid that thought process was. So then I got into it. Initially, just simply got a MIDI controller, got Ableton. And I was like, I'm gonna make beats now. That's what I'm gonna do. Mm-hmm. And boy, man, some of the first things I made were, man, they were absolute garbage. And they're funny to go back and listen to now, because it's comical, you know. And quickly realized that it just wasn't a lot of fun only doing it in the computer.
Yeah.
And it seemed like from things that I had seen, you know, be it online, YouTube, whatever it was, you know, people playing with hardware, and it just looked like a lot more fun. Mm-hmm. And it was around that time that there was an artist that was on deadmau5's label, Matt Lang, who had gotten into Eurorack and modular. And it was also at that same time I discovered his music. And so it was one of those kind of things where I saw that and I was like, okay, what is this that is happening?
Yeah.
Because it was this creation, or seeing the creation of sound, that from the get-go, you've just got a bunch of empty holes that need a patch cable put in.
Right.
And you're now creating this with electricity.
Yeah. And
it was fascinating to me. You know, it was kind of maybe the scientific approach to it. It was like, well, how is this working? How is this? Because that wasn't something that I was aware of, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And how that all worked. So ended up, you know, getting in contact with him and asking a lot of questions into what was happening. What should I get? He was very, you know, kind as far as to offer up his input, and it snowballed from there.
Did you spend any time in VCV rack, or you went straight to hardware?
Went straight to hardware. I have actually yet to even mess with VCV rack.
Quick side note for a listener who's interested in modular synthesis. Man, if you want to understand this stuff for free, is it open source?
I'm not honestly sure.
It doesn't matter. There's a piece of software called VCV Rack, which is free, and it's for Mac, Windows, probably Linux, and you can learn basic synthesis techniques of patching oscillators and LFOs and VCAs. It's great. And there's a great community behind it, and you can download modules for it, and new modules are being made all the time for free by people, creative geniuses. There's great tutorials. And I played with that for 6 months, laughing at these silly people buying their expensive modules.
Well, I mean,
until I realized that I really needed fingers on these things. You know?
See, that's the thing. And from everything that I've heard from individuals who also have messed with that, you know, they might have, you know, at some point played with Reactor.
Oh, I love Reactor.
I haven't done that either.
So powerful.
And I've heard that it's similar in that regard. But I mean, there's only so much fun that you can kind of have if you're clicking things here and there.
I agree.
Plus,
you've got one hand. You know, like we're not multi-mousing here.
I don't think you should do that.
I don't know what USB would do.
That would be, yeah.
How does this work? No. This is my right-handed mouse. This is.
It's where you just MIDI map things.
Right. Yeah. No, it's so different. It's so different. Before we go any further, let's hear another track off this release that's coming out someday soon from you, sir.
Hopefully so.
Okay. What do you want us to play here?
Let's go ahead and go with Depth.
Okay, tell us a little bit about this track Depth that we just heard.
So to be honest, that track really there's not a lot of meaning or significance behind it. To be honest,
Amen.
it was one of those things where I it just kind of started recording in bit by bit, and it kind of just began to kind of take a life on of its own. And
So with that style of working, how do you know when to stop? Like, how do you say, like, we're good?
boy, that's
That's the rub, isn't it? You know.
I mean, that's the toughest thing, and and you hear statements like, "Oh, a track's never finished;
Right.
it's only abandoned," sort of a thing.
Right.
What I tend to honestly do is kind of the Tommy Boy approach with Chris Farley, where he's he's like, "It's my naughty little pet, it's naughty," and he just rips it, and that's when I blow the sale, right? And so what I tend to do is with a track is it's I'd be like, "Hey, this is cool." And then I start tweaking one thing, and then the next thing you know it, I tweak it. And so by the time it's all said and done, I will have taken a track that was 99.5% finished, and I will have somehow managed to strip it back to about 30% done, and it now doesn't sound anywhere close to it. Because, there comes a point where you can start
Right.
over-analyzing everything.
Right.
Not can start, where you will start over-analyzing everything, and you get to a point where you completely destroy what you've created.
How do we balance the if somebody likes it thing? Because I know we would all say, I make music that I want to hear, that I like hearing. Okay. I think that's easy to say, but how much do we think about, I mean, it's great if other people like it. That's a good thing.
It's constant.
Yeah. Does that get stuck in your head?
Unfortunately, yeah. It's a constant struggle, I think. I think that's the main reason that that I have not put out a bunch of work. That it's only been anything that's been put out there is, I'm going to throw this on SoundCloud because whatever, right? Because I feel like, especially in this day and age, you're making music. There's a huge thing about, well, I know you're not supposed to care what other people think about it, right? However, that's literally what makes a record or music that's put out, quote unquote, successful, or whatever you want to call it, is whether or not people listen to it. So there's the creative side of it, which is, I did this, I created this, and I'm proud of it. If anyone listens to it, great. If not, great. But the problem I have with that is, you can tend to have that mentality on things, but if you put something out there and then nobody listens to it, what was the point of putting it out there?
Well,
Right?
You and I talked about legacy and my belief in just leaving something, not like a big statement here, like this is what I did with my life, but sort of,
Yeah.
where it's like, this is the art that I made during my lifetime.
My approach to that has honestly kind of changed. Whereas initially that was a thought. It was, I want to make my own music. I'm going to self-release because I don't want a label having their hand in the cookie jar, so to speak. And I'm going to master it and mix and master it myself. I want it to be me, right? And I want to have it be something that at the end of the day, I'm able to leave to the kids. And I'm able to say, hey kids, this is yours. I made this and this is yours to take and do with it as you wish, right? What I have realized though, and this may or may not, resonate with others, but it's this thought of, that's it. It's one thing to leave music as a legacy, but what is most important to me that I've kind of come to realize, it's the journey along the way that is meeting individuals. That's the legacy personally that I feel that I'm most most trying to think of how to phrase this. That I'm just geared to do. I initially got into this, making music as a means to be, I'm going to be a cool, music producer and make really awesome beats, blah, blah, blah. But as I've kind of continued on, I've realized that I am more impactful as a human being if I am impacting other people's lives along the way. And I'm not meaning in the terms of, I'm being inspirational. Here's my Instagram page. Check out the cool videos and music that I'm putting out. I want you to think I'm doing great. It's the other details of, when it comes to social interaction, when it comes to, the encouragement, and I feel honestly that it's a thing where music can be left as a legacy, and that's awesome because it's there. People can go back and listen to it. But the ability to impact other people's lives on a daily basis based on the music that you're making is where I feel that that's the most important legacy, so to speak, that I can leave, because that just isn't just for kids or family members, whoever you're making your music for, right?
Right. That's all the people who
it's everyone you make contact with, right?
So that was a track called Darkest Hour from Modekt. Here I sit with Colin Williams. Would you please tell me about that track and this project and what's going on here?
A couple of years ago is when this track actually had began. And it started when it was a period of kind of, pretty just down there, so to speak. Just as far as just mentally goes. It was a period of time where the questioning of what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I don't know what I'm doing. Not any good. The self-critic, right? It comes into play. Where you have work that you finish, send it to family relatives, let them listen to stuff, and the response you get back is, "Well, so what am I supposed to do with this? Like, it's a song, you listen to it, man. I don't understand."
Where's the singer? When does the singer start?
I don't understand why this is difficult, right?
That's my favorite part.
Oh, God. And so, and so it's just where you feel that it was a situation where I felt very much isolated and alone because, if you have pretty much your entire circle of people that's your influence and your sphere, none of them listen to that stuff. And I'm excluding my wife in this category. She doesn't count in this because obviously she does. But it's one of those things where you want the approval, you want the outside verification of, hey, you know what, this is great, I love it, you're doing a good job, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And it honestly was just a pretty dark period of time where questioning, why am I doing this? Will this ever work? Will I ever do anything of any significance, right? Because I used to write little notes on the note app on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gone back during this section of time in 2017, and I've read stuff that I've written as far as that there were going to be lyrics for songs or whatever it may be, right? And it's like, oh wow,
who is this guy,
right? And but this song, it really was that was what I was feeling.
The darkest hour.
It was the darkest hour, and that's what I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important. That's one of the reasons that I feel that it is important for it to be more than just about the music. That it needs to be, it needs to be about each other. It needs to be about the people that you meet. Because in all honesty, you never know. And I've had conversations with a few folks. That all they needed was an ear. They just needed somebody to either listen to what they were saying, or they needed somebody just to give them some encouragement, right? And and that's one of the other kind of turning points when it comes to me and music and my thought process with it, as far as if something, or if it's released or if it's not released. It's my purpose in this whole music thing is not to make awesome, amazing music necessarily. If that happens, awesome. I hope to continue, increasing my quality of music. But, when it comes to the encouragement, because you never know when somebody needs to just hear, hey, you know what, man, I saw that Instagram post. That was really awesome. You're doing good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things that, for anyone listening who I've ever talked to, right, who I've ever sent just a random message being like, hey, man, I really like this. I appreciate it. I hope you're doing well. Or if it's any situation that I've ever said, I've seen anything online that somebody has, felt like, been like, oh, this is a terrible day. I just hate this, or I'm going through this. And I've sent you a message saying, hey, are you cool? Do you need to talk? It has been out of 100% certainty that I've cared. It's one, because I've been there, and that's where this was, where you just feel, hey, you know what? It'd be cool to feel appreciated. It would be neat, right? And when you don't feel that, that's where Darkest Hour came from.
Man, I hope you just keep making music. I mean, if this is the first release, you and I had a great conversation yesterday about finding ways to be satisfied with where we are now and being hungry for something else, but also being present. How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a mental conversation that I had myself on the flight here. It was, this thought process of staring out the window, 30,000 feet, thinking, man, it sure would be cool if I was being paid to go play somewhere live. Mm-hmm. And the mind starts drifting that way. And then it was like, you've got the one on the angel on one side and the devil on the other, and they're going back and forth, right? Or whatever the, little visualization is of that. And it was like, just the other side was like, just shut up, man. Like, when you started this, the first time that you played a couple years ago, had somebody been like, hey, you know what, within a year and a half, you'll have a chance to have played in Michigan. You'll have had a chance to go play in California. You've played other MOTs and, other shows and whatnot. Had that been, provided to me as information at that point in time, I would have been like, what? No way. Right? And so there is this fine line between always looking for the next thing. It's always looking for the next type of high, so to speak, right? Whereas you have to appreciate what you're being given, right? Mm-hmm. And it really is part of the journey. And it's the meeting of all the random people that you get to meet along the way of the journey. It's the things you get to do. It's the opportunities that you have. And you have to be appreciative of it.
So how do we balance like being a dreamer and wanting those new things and always dreaming, but then also fighting this human nature of like, wanting to be present and enjoying it, like as we're doing it.
Right. I feel like that you can't let it consume you. And I think that's kind of, at least personally speaking, where it's been with me. Because I have aspirations. And I mean, I love to play live. It's fun. It's just fun. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I have aspirations of saying, man, you know what? There's a music festival, Ziget Fest in Budapest.
Right.
They've got a thing called I believe it was called I can't remember if it was called the Techno Dome. No, it wasn't. It was called the Coliseum. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of something different. But it's called the Coliseum, and it's basically a wood structure that they've built somewhat resembles, the Roman Coliseum in a way. And they play electronic music. They play techno in there. And will that happen? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe way down the road. Who knows? And so you can have those dreams, right? But what I've realized is that you have to have that balance of having the dreams and what you want to do and where you would like to end up. Realizing that it's very possible that maybe things will take you in a completely different direction, right? Mm-hmm. And instead of focusing solely on that, oh, here's my end goal of where I want to be, it's realizing that all the other things along the way that help you get maybe to that end goal, are really good things that you should be appreciative of and focus on. Mm-hmm. Just be appreciative. You have to be.
Colin, you're a sage, and this message is so timely right now. Thank you so much for encouraging us to appreciate the things we do have right now. Speaking of appreciate, I want to acknowledge a new patron on my Patreon that I really appreciate, Ms. Erica Almgren. Thank you so much for choosing to be part of this show and to encourage me to keep doing what I need to do. This is a passion project, and those of you who know me know that I need to do these things. So thank you so much for supporting this show, and if you would like to become a patron of Dotwave, please consider heading over to patreon.com/Dotwave. Stay tuned. In the next couple weeks, I have some great episodes, which I'm launching. I'm your host, John O. Wells, and you've been listening to Dotwave.